can't help feeling that asking Marion to be a bridesmaid was a rare sign of good taste on Mrs. Russell's part. Not to be unkind.
Unkind, but not necessarily untrue.
Wasn't there something in the paper that we wanted to ask you about? Agnes?
Well, I like Mrs. Russell, and I've decided from now on, I'm only going to say nice things about everyone.
Quite an adjustment for you.
Don't make me change my mind.
Welcome back to the official Gilded Age podcast, where every week we go behind the scenes of HBO's The Gilded Age to discuss both the drama and the history of each episode. I am Tom Meyers from the Bowery Boys podcast, joined, as always, with her own dramatic insights by my friend from TCM, Alicia Malone.
Hello, Tom. Well, I do have plenty of dramatic insights for this episode because the big day is here. It is Gladys's wedding.
We have been waiting for this. It was on, it was off, and now it's here. And wow, what an episode. Alicia, I'm just going to ask you this once. Where are you sitting in that church?
Oh, I mean, I think towards the back because I want to be able to chat and gossip and not be caught out by Bertha. What about you?
I want to be right next to Aunt Monica because
Oh,
I
yeah.
just met her and I just can't get enough.
Yes, she would have some good insights into what Bertha is actually like. But also this episode, we have two great interviews with people that were pivotal to this episode. Taissa Farmiga, who plays Gladys, and the costume designer, Kasia Walicka Maimone.
But before that, let us recap season 3, episode 4. It's called Marriage is a Gamble, written by Julian Fellowes and Sonia Warfield and directed by Michael Engler. So the episode begins in an almost militaristic manner, with lines of soldiers, or rather staff members, who are marching up and down stairs and hallways to attend a kind of pep talk at the bottom of the steps, which is led by their drill sergeant, Bertha. It was really quite a group, Alicia. You see the cooks, you see the footmen in livery, the maids. There are like dozens of them. I think I counted 50. And Bertha is pleading with them to help make Gladys's wedding day a success.
Yeah, and I was really surprised that we're getting straight into the wedding. I mean, Bertha does not mess around. We just had the engagement. Now we have the wedding. And obviously when we talk about Gladys's wedding, we have a real life event to compare it with. The wedding of Consuelo Vanderbilt to the 9th Duke of Marlborough. So was it a quick turnaround for her as well from engagement to wedding?
Yes, in real life, things also moved really quickly. Remember that the Duke came to Newport in late August 1895 to stay with Alva and Consuelo. And remember, Alva threw a big ball at the end of the month in his honor. 3 weeks after that ball, on September 20th, the news hit that the Duke had proposed to Consuelo. And then they got married on November 6th, 1895. So yeah, they had like 6 or 7 weeks to pull things together, which does not seem like a lot of time. But I have a feeling that Alva probably had some help getting through some of that planning.
Yeah, I'm sure she had her own army of helpers to help pull it off, kind of like Bertha does here. Now, we hear in the show that Gladys has 6 bridesmaids, and we see Bertha reluctantly asking Marion if she will fill in for one of the bridesmaids who's ill. So Larry mentions Leonie Jerome, and Bertha mentions Carrie Astor, Mary Drexel, and Isabel Winthrop.
Right, and there are some familiar names there, I think, as you would say. A nice little Easter egg in there that they included Leonie Jerome. If you will just indulge me for a moment and stick with me here, Leonie, who got sick in our story, was a real person, and in real life, she was the youngest sister of Jenny Jerome. And Jenny Jerome is the one who married Lord Randolph Churchill, and as we mentioned, was the mother of Winston Churchill. Jenny was also the aunt of Charles Spencer Churchill, who was the 9th Duke of Marlborough, the very Duke who married, you guessed it, Consuelo Vanderbilt. Do you follow me?
I got it. I got it now.
Okay.
So what about Consuelo when it came to bridesmaids? Did she have 6 or did she have more bridesmaids than that?
She had 8, in fact, who
Okay.
she said were selected for her by her mother, and several were much older than she was. Carrie Astor was not one of them. Mary Drexel was not one. We know how Julian Fellows loves dropping in her Drexel. But some of the real bridesmaids did come from families who we hear on the show. There was a Marie Winthrop and a May Golette and Edith Morton. I couldn't find any reports of last-minute sicknesses or stand-ins.
Okay, well, throughout this episode, we hear that there are various news stories about the intimate details involving Gladys's wedding, including information on her dress, on her corset, also her undergarments. And I know that Consuelo's marriage was a huge story in the press. So what kind of rumors were circulating about her wedding day? Because I did read that there was an article about her undergarments.
There was, published in multiple newspapers. Consuelo wrote in her memoir about reporters calling her house daily, and when they weren't given any information, she said that, quote, accounts were fabricated. I read to my stupefaction that my garters had gold clasps studded with diamonds and wondered how I should live down such vulgarities. But the show's writers weren't necessarily making this up, because I found an article published in the New York Times, of all places, on October 27th, about 10 days before the wedding, with an illustration of Consuelo's corset.
Wow.
And there was a full description of it that included the lines, quote, it is of white brocaded satin. The clasps are like the clasps of an ordinary corset, except in this instance, they are of solid gold. And it goes on and on about the hooks in the front made of solid Roman gold.
Wow, sounds expensive and also very, very detailed about the
Yes.
corset. So where were the papers getting all of this information from?
Well, the gossip newspaper Town Topics suggested a few days before Consuelo's wedding that maybe Alva might be acting as her own press agent. But I am sure that Bertha would never, ever leak details to the press.
Never. She would never even think of that, such a thing. Okay, well, back in our show, Larry is upset that Bertha did not invite her sister, Monica, to the wedding. He says she's the only relative of yours that we know. And so then behind Bertha's back, Larry invites Monica, and she arrives. She's played by Merritt Weaver, who is a 2-time Emmy Award winner. And it's funny that Monica just immediately picks up on the fact that Bertha is not so happy to see her.
I'm loving Aunt Monica. I actually think that I reacted a little bit like Mrs. Winterton when I saw her for the first time. I was kind of like, how fascinating. And she is fascinating. I mean, she offers some insight into Bertha's past, right? She seems completely unfazed by Bertha's position in society. She knows the real Bertha. I think my favorite moment here was when George takes her arm and they sort of saunter off together, looking like they are just ready to seriously dish, and swap secrets.
Come to the drawing room and tell me all your news.
I'm not convinced Bertha's very pleased to see me.
Nonsense. She's delighted. Nobody loves family more than Bertha.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of secrets there. And it is nice to see that someone is representing Bertha's family at the wedding.
But Alicia, did you notice that there is nobody representing any of the Russells?
Yes, that's interesting.
Yeah, at least we're not introduced to them. All of society seems to be there, right? But Monica is the only relative on Gladys's side, which actually does have a parallel in the Vanderbilt story, because aside from her immediate family, there were no Vanderbilts present at Consuelo's wedding. And there were like dozens of Vanderbilts.
Yeah. So was that because they didn't agree with the arranged nature of the marriage?
No, I think primarily because they were upset with Alva because of her recent divorce with Willie Kay and the way that she was treating him, right? And because she was being seen publicly around town with Oliver Belmont. That family drama was another major part of all of the press coverage. And it's especially notable because St. Thomas's Church was located right in the middle of what was called Vanderbilt Row. Like most of the family lived within 2 minutes walk from the church. So, everybody was talking about the fact that there were no Vanderbilts at the wedding.
And Bertha's main question for Monica seems to be like, what have you got to wear? She is very concerned that Monica just has the one dress that she plans to wear for both the wedding and for the Duke's dinner. And she tells her sister how many times in one day she gets changed, which makes me exhausted just thinking about it. And Monica is very surprised by all of the rules her sister has.
What rules you live by?
Yeah, she definitely has rules. And this whole thing makes me want to know more about young Bertha, pre-becoming Mrs. George Russell. What was she like? Can you imagine?
Teenage Bertha O'Brien. I imagine Bertha had drive, right? The other person who knew her then was George, which is why Monica and George are so fun to watch, right, as they roll their eyes at each other. And we see that happening here at this pre-wedding dinner for the Duke. Gladys is, of course, absent. She's hiding out in her room. But Bertha is on her best behavior. Aunt Monica is looking like a, quote, cook on her night off, and is just peppering the Duke with all of these uncomfortably direct questions. And we meet, new character alert, the Duke's uptight sister, Lady Sarah, who is played by British actress Hattie Morahan. And Alicia, I am just loving what Lady Sarah is serving up at this dinner. It is like delicious British snobbery.
Yeah, this is a really funny dinner because on one side you have Monica, who's just blurting out whatever she thinks. Then you have the other side with Lady Sarah being very cold and snooty during coffee. Monica's coffee cup mysteriously breaks, which happens to ruin her one dress. And I wonder, Tom, how that happened. How could that have happened?
How could that have happened? Did you see Monica's face the moment that the cup crumbled in her fingers?
Yeah.
I mean, she had just tossed out the line, I wonder if Gladys has thought about it. I would. And she makes this hilarious face at the Duke, which I just can't imagine anybody ever making a face at him like this. And then this coffee cup crumbles in her fingers, and Monica quickly just kind of exits stage left.
I hope the coffee didn't burn her.
No, it wasn't hot.
Bertha, tell me you didn't.
The dress was hideous, George. How could I let her appear before the whole of New York looking like a cook on her day off? It would have been unkind.
So it was an act of mercy.
I've got something picked out from 2 years ago. No one will remember me in it. She'll look lovely.
We're a pretty ruthless pair, aren't we, you and I?
I don't know what you mean. I like things to be right. But don't you?
Well, there you go. Bertha just plainly admits it. And by the way, that scene takes place in Bertha's bedroom. And we're getting a lot of bedroom scenes this season. I get to see all their fabulous nightgowns.
It's true. Remember that Carrie Coon told us that they had to record a bunch of bedroom scenes right after she got back from Thailand filming White Lotus. So she was afraid of appearing suntanned, actually, in those scenes. But this particular exchange was interesting because at first George seems to find common ground with Bertha, right? With this pretty ruthless pair comment. But then when he tells her that he would have been fine, marrying Gladys off to a banker with a cottage in Newport, Bertha snaps back.
Go to bed, George, and wake up sensible.
Yikes.
Oof.
Alicia, how did that line sit with you?
Oof, yeah, it's pretty rough. But I think Bertha's just fed up with George at this point, and she's tired of having to explain herself and her position, whether it's right or wrong. But then before we know it, it is the wedding day, and there are flowers everywhere in the Russells' house. Gladys is still in her room in protest. Marion is summoned to try to convince her to go through with the wedding. And I was reading about Consuelo's wedding, and she said that on her big day, there was a footman stationed right outside her door. Is that right?
Yes, she wrote in her memoir that, quote, I spent the morning of my wedding day in tears and alone. No one came near me. A footman had been posted at the door of my apartment, and not even my governess was admitted, unquote. And like we see in the show, Consuelo didn't have any help from her mother here, right? Alva had already headed off to the church.
Yeah, and here when everyone is at the church, Gladys is still in her room, but George goes up to talk to her, basically saying it's too late to back out now. And again, a similar thing happened on Consuelo's wedding day where her father had a talk with her.
Yeah, as soon as Alva departed, Willie Kay, Consuelo's father, arrived to accompany her. Consuelo wrote that she, quote, felt cold and numb as I went down to meet my father and the bridesmaids who were waiting for me. We were 20 minutes late, for my eyes, swollen with the tears I had wept, required copious sponging before I could face the curious stares that always greet a bride.
Well, here when George is waiting, it's very tense. You know, is Gladys going to come down or not? And just when hope seems lost, she appears. And the crowd roars. Well, the servants do a hip hip hooray and give her a clap. Woo! And by the way, what a dress she is wearing. It is ivory silk. There's flowers everywhere. It looked similar to what I know about Consuelo Vanderbilt's dress. I think we're going to have to ask Kasia, the costume designer, about that when we talk to her later in the show, whether she was inspired by Consuelo's wedding dress. But of course, Consuelo didn't get to choose her own dress. Alva chose it. And there were rumors that it cost around $6,000 in 1890s money.
Yes, in fact, the precise cost reported by the New York World was $6,720.35, which I rather unscientifically converted on the internet to about $257,000 today.
Whoa, that's an expensive dress.
Yeah.
You want to rewear that one. And Consuelo's wedding took place at St. Thomas's Church, just like Gladys's. But unlike what we see in the show, there were crowds lining the streets trying to get a glimpse at Consuelo. And reading about it reminded me of a royal wedding, you know, something like Harry and Meghan's wedding.
Yeah, nearly royal, but noble. Remember, not royal, noble.
Okay, so same, but different, right?
Well, royals are nobles that rule.
Okay.
I think. I looked that up too. But in real life, there were throngs of people. The New York Tribune wrote the next day that a crowd, quote, composed of thousands of people of all grades, mostly women, blocked Fifth Avenue before and after the wedding, unquote, and that it required 200 policemen to hold them back.
Wow, insane. So Mrs. Astor was at Consuelo's wedding. She was also here at Gladys's wedding, reeling about a blind item in the paper about her daughter, Charlotte Drayton. Charlotte's husband challenged her lover to a duel. So how does this compare to the real story? Was there actually a duel that happened?
And there was a duel that was threatened. In 1892. Mrs. Astor's daughter, Charlotte Drayton, was allegedly having an affair with a man named Hallett Barrow, right, who we saw 2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Now, the previous fall, the Draytons had moved to London, and a couple of months later, Mr. Barrow moved to London as well. Charlotte's husband hired detectives, and Drayton himself, her husband, busted into a London hotel room where he caught them lunching together. Okay. So this did indeed lead her husband, Mr. Drayton, to challenge Barrow to a duel, which he turned down. But the whole thing was covered in great detail, including all of the dueling correspondences in the New York Sun in March of 1892.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's leave that for a minute. We'll return to the wedding soon. But right now we need to talk about Ada because, Tom, you were right. Mrs. Bauer's cryptic words about knowing someone who could help Ada talk to Luke one final time did turn out to be a reference to the spiritualism movement.
That's right. And these terms can get a little bit confusing because we are not talking about people who are, quote, spiritual, right? We're talking about the spiritualism movement, which gained popularity in the 19th century. And it believed that it was possible to communicate with the dead, right? And that messages could be sent between the human and spirit worlds by mediums and through seances. And, you know, many prominent people at the time believed in spiritualism, including Queen Victoria and Mary Todd Lincoln. Even Cornelius Vanderbilt believed in mediums, and he actually tried to use them to get stock tips from the beyond.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Well, Ada is holding her session with a medium in her dining room, and the medium is Madame Dashkova, played by Andrea Martin. She's a legendary comedic actress in film and television, and also, Tom, she is a 2-time Tony Award winner.
She's incredible. Love her in Only Murders in the Building.
Yes.
And of course, I saw her several times in the 2013 revival of Pippin in New York as Pippin's trapeze-loving and swinging grandmother. It was just fabulous. Love her. It's so fun to see her playing Madame Dashkova, which is a take on the real-life Helena Blavatsky, who was known as Madame Blavatsky. She was an incredible person. She was the most famous spiritualist in New York in the 1870s. So this is going to be very interesting. It will become interesting, hopefully, but because in today's episode, before anything really can happen, Agnes storms into the dining room.
Yeah, she is quite rude, but very upset, and does seem to have her sister's best interests at heart. She says that Ada is grieving, vulnerable, and suggestive.
Agnes is mad.
Yeah.
Did you notice the way that she ripped back the curtains?
Yeah, I was worried she was going to pull them down.
She totally, Mrs. Bauer looked like she would have rather been anywhere else in the world, but trapped in there. Once Agnes is alone with her sister, she says something that really underscores, I think, the friction that existed between spiritualism and mainstream religion. When she notes that, quote, Luke would not approve of this.
I believe in a life after death, and so do you.
Yes, but I don't believe in table tapping and crystal balls and any of the other nonsense designed to raise your hopes and part you with your money.
There are more things in heaven and earth, Agnes, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Ada just really wants to connect with Luke again. But how did people in the 1880s view this kind of paranormal activity, psychics, spiritualism?
Yeah, well, I think that the story here is tapping into something notable, Alicia. People during this period really, you have to remember, people had lived through so many game-changing scientific breakthroughs, right? So couldn't there also be spiritual breakthroughs, right? Wasn't it possible also to be a church-going Christian and also be open to the idea that there was more out there that wasn't yet understood? I think that's where Ada is. I think Ada sees Madame Dashkova as a kind of guide to that world. But of course, Agnes sees her as a, quote, charlatan.
Yeah. Well, let's leave that for now and go back to Peggy. Actually, let's go over to Newport because she is still in Newport. And despite Mrs. Kirkland's obvious misgivings about the Scotts, they are all invited over to the Kirklands for some iced tea. Of course, Mrs. Kirkland immediately makes her views known about Peggy's work. She calls the article that Peggy wrote about the South an angry and violent subject for a woman to write about.
And when Peggy says, well, somebody has to write about it, Mrs. Kirkland has this kind of amazing sneer, when she says, certainly, but not a young lady. It's really wow, her face. They are not hitting it off on any subject. The same for women's suffrage, but really, to top it all off, I think the most awkward moment was when Mrs. Kirkland explained that she will attend Peggy's talk because, well...
Anytime my son is so taken with a body, I'm bound to be curious.
There is just nothing nice about the way that was phrased.
Yeah, and the way she used the word body, too. I thought that was a very interesting choice of words. But the Kirklands do come to hear Peggy speak, and Peggy is talking all about the new discriminatory laws that are going into effect, which, from what I understand, included the Jim Crow laws.
That's right. So many rights had been gained by Black Americans during the Reconstruction era that immediately followed the Civil War. But by the late 1870s, there were new laws that were being passed throughout the South that enforced really widespread racial segregation and introduced new things like poll taxes to really suppress the Black vote and to diminish their political power. So Peggy here is talking about how the rights of African Americans were actually being, at that moment, rolled back.
Yeah, and Peggy is speaking up to make everyone aware of the repercussions of these laws. But Mrs. Kirkland, once again, just can't help herself. After Dorothy shares that Arthur has returned to Brooklyn for work, she says,
But he's not a Newport man, is he? Not like us. His history is so very different from ours.
My husband is an honorable man. A business owner and a proud husband and father. How different is that than you?
It's the same, and my wife would agree. Newport is not the center of everyone's world, Elizabeth.
Oh dear. I mean, it does seem like Mr. Kirkland is really trying to smooth things over.
Yes, but every time he tries to smooth, she just keeps talking, right?
Yeah.
She says that, she can't pretend to understand Peggy's choice of subjects. But you spoke well. I mean, it's like boom, boom, boom. It's just so hard to watch. Then, just kind of with that frosty smile, she just kind of leaves behind Peggy and Dorothy and Peggy's Aunt Athena just fuming. And I think that it's at this moment that Peggy now understands why her parents had been, shall we say, less than enthusiastic about the Kirklands.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just so much happening in this one episode because we also have to talk about Jack and Larry. In the previous episode, they met with a clockmaker named Mr. Weston, but he was unsure about Jack's invention. In this episode, they are summoned to another meeting with Mr. Weston, and Jack is quite nervous about this meeting.
They do, and Jack is all dressed up in that new suit again for this meeting with Mr. Weston, Mr. Eldridge. By the way, there were actual clockmakers in England by the names of Ralph Weston and John Eldridge. Couldn't find any in New York, but I found them in England. But these men sort of interrupt Larry as he's pitching to them to tell them that they're ready to buy the whole thing lock, stock, and barrel. And then they just start throwing out numbers.
Before we answer, may we know how much you are offering?
We were thinking of 3. Or 4?
We cannot go higher.
I'm afraid you must. We were hoping for 6.
I rewatched this moment several times just to watch Jack's face when he realizes that 6 means $600,000.
And he says, what? Yeah, just like that, Jack will have $300,000 to his name, which would have been an outrageous sum of money. Again, it's not easy to put $1884 into $2025. But I found an online calculator I used to estimate, and it said that a payment of $300,000 in 1884 would be something like a payment in 2025 of $96 million.
Wow.
So, yeah, imagine Jack would suddenly be kind of like a tech bro today.
Yes.
Just like a nice one.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And now he has more money than Agnes even. And so Jack understandably feels nervous about sharing his news with the downstairs staff. But later he does reveal the amount to Mrs. Bauer, and she drops her mixing bowl with her bread dough in shock.
Once it all kind of sinks in, I think that we see that Mrs. Bauer is extremely proud of Jack, right?
Yeah.
But they agree in that moment to keep it a secret. It's actually a little bit sad because he wants to stay on. He doesn't want anything to change.
I've never had a home before this one. Not a real home.
Then this must be our secret.
Yeah, this is quite a sad moment because you understand why Jack sees this as his home and doesn't want to leave it. But let's leave him for a minute because we've got to go back to the wedding day. As we heard at the very start of this podcast, Ada is the one who stirs the pot with Mrs. Astor, which was quite a surprise, asking Agnes if there was something in the papers they had wanted to ask Mrs. Astor about.
We are back to Aunt Ada's colossal flub. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know it's bad when Oscar Van Ryn and Ward McAllister are trying to cover up for you.
Here at the wedding, Ward McAllister is by Mrs. Astor's side, and as we heard, he vows to only say nice things about everyone from now on. And Monica is also there with her new dress lent by Bertha, and she remains unsure about the whole shebang. She doesn't know whether it's all going to turn out well.
And George, sitting in the carriage with his daughter, just must feel like he has no control at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think Consuela's father, Willie Kay, probably felt as well, because in both cases, the mothers had taken care of everything, and the daughters knew what had to happen next.
Dear Father, I love you. But as you said earlier, we're past the point of no return.
Oh, it's grim, and that's happening outside. While inside, Lady Sarah says to the Duke, just try not to laugh.
Which was a particularly striking and mean little dig, if you ask me.
Yeah.
By the way, the real Duke of Marlborough did have a best man present. His cousin, Ivor Guest, was there. And he was also joined at the wedding by the British ambassador. But Consuelo, like Gladys, was really late, and everyone did wait. And Alva was noticeably impatient, just as we see Bertha impatient, right? Wondering where her daughter was and praying that her plan had not gone awry.
Mm-hmm.
And then here in the show, suddenly Gladys arrives.
Yeah, she walks down the aisle, the tears are flowing. I really like the point of view shot of the guests seen through Gladys's veil because they all look a bit shocked when they see her crying. And I'm guessing to achieve this POV shot, they must have put a veil over the camera and then walked the camera down the aisle. So that's what the actors were really looking at. But the looks of shock from the guests are reminiscent of what I've read about Consuelo Vanderbilt's wedding, where she said she was happy to have a veil to hide behind.
Well, and the real-life Duke of Marlborough later said that when Consuelo pulled back her veil, he immediately saw that she looked, quote, much troubled, which I think kind of sums up how Gladys looks here.
Definitely. And at Gladys's wedding, the priest's words about obeying and eternal damnation makes it all feel quite ominous. But Bertha, of course, she's overjoyed. Her tears are of the happy variety. And once again, she has triumphed.
What a triumph for Mrs. Russell. Strange, really. When you think that 3 years ago, none of us ever heard of her.
I love it. It's the same kind of what a triumph comment that Mrs. Astor gave in the finale to season 1 at Bertha's ball. Remember that? That was a triumph, and this is another one. And in real life, that was also a triumph. As the New York Tribune wrote, Consuelo, quote, entered the church as Miss Vanderbilt soon after noon and made her exit later as the Duchess of Marlborough.
And here, Gladys exits as the Duchess of Buckingham, and they immediately set sail. The Duke wants to get the uncomfortable and embarrassing wedding night out of the way straight away.
Which happens off camera because we are given a lovely final image.
Yeah, that's right. We see New York City and the new Brooklyn Bridge in the porthole as Gladys sails away for an unknown life.
Epic. Alicia and I are going to catch our breath, and then we'll be right back with our interviews with Taissa Farmiga and Kasia Walicka Maimone.
Will you at least come down to say hello?
I don't think so.
You must come down eventually.
Or what? You'll dress me by force and drag me to the church in chains?
Actually, now that Bertha thinks about it, that might be a good plan. Welcome back to the official Gilded Age podcast. I am Tom Meyers, joined by Alicia Malone.
Yes, and Tom, you and I were very lucky that we got to speak with Taissa Farmiga, who plays Gladys, all about this episode. We did this through a virtual junket, which means that we were at home looking like we do. Taissa was at a junket with professional lighting. She looked amazing. So here is our interview with Taissa Farmiga. It's lovely to see you again. And, you know, Gladys really goes on an emotional roller coaster this season.
Telling me.
Yeah. When you first got the scripts for season 3, what were your thoughts?
I was lucky that I got to have a call with Julian and David Crockett right before they sent any scripting. I was just curious, like, what the Gladys's arc would be, and I got a little bit of insight into it. And it's funny because at the beginning of the season, episode 1, I think Gladys is a bit on her high horse. You know, she's feeling confident. She's gained her own personal confidence, and I think she feels like she has the support of her father. She has the support of her brother, and she feels like she could follow her heart, which is a very empowering feeling. Little does she know that is not going to be an easy path forward.
Yeah, definitely not. And one of the questions we have this season is whether Bertha is doing all of this for Gladys or for herself. Do you have thoughts on that?
That's actually a beautiful question, because for me, one of the biggest questions this season is it selflessness or selfishness that is actually motivating me? Just for the characters in general. And for Bertha, you know, if I have to look through her eyes, I can understand why she's doing what she's doing. From an outside perspective, from Gladys's perspective, it sucks. For me, happiness is feeling content in the moment. For Bertha, happiness is the plan coming together. But for Gladys, it's just I want to be happy. It should be as simple as that.
We see that Gladys has this special relationship with her father. And, you know, in the real life story, Consuelo, I mean, she may have had a good relationship with her father, but her parents were divorced at this point, you know, and her father was kind of not even there.
He didn't have influence in the way that George has influence. Although actually, does George have influence? Because Gladys ends up in the situation she's in, despite the fact that he said that he would prevent this situation. But in the end, it breaks his heart, but he still chooses Bertha's side. One thing I actually think that's very beautiful about George's love for his daughter is that he feels immense guilt for having to encourage her. I mean, he does say, like, if you're going to say no, say no. And then Gladys, of course, is wishy-washy because you don't know what to say or what's the right decision. And when you have how many hundreds of people in society expecting something of you, and it's kind of hard to be individualistic in that time and take a stand and be like, I'm going to go for what I want. So she kind of goes with the wave of it. But marriage was it was a contract. It was a business negotiation at the time. So with the Duke, I think George does Gladys a really wonderful favor by he gives the Duke more money, which is why the Duke accepts to marry her. But George puts that money in Gladys's pocket. The allowance goes to Gladys. And the Duke, of course, is a bit upset. But George is like tilling the soil and watering the soil to plant a seed for partnership. Because if the money went straight into the Duke's pocket, like, there's no need to engage with Gladys, really. This is an arranged marriage, you know? The fact that the Duke has to rely on his new wife and foster a relationship, that is at the hand of George. And I think that was the last beautiful thing George did, considering he didn't stand up and like remove Gladys from this arranged marriage.
In episode 4, we see the big wedding day, and Gladys is not happy about it. But what about you as an actress getting to film a wedding?
Well, I've filmed a few weddings. I think my very first scene as an actress was a wedding scene. My first scene was actually me 6 months pregnant, vomiting in a toilet on my wedding night. And then we filmed the wedding scene a few days later. I've done a few of those. I've had my own wedding in real life, divorce now. So I've done the whole array of it. For me, the biggest thing I love is the ensemble scenes. We never get to see each other, work with each other, because there are so many different households, the upstairs, the downstairs, across the street, down the block. So the moments that we get to be together is the best. One of the first moments this season where we had the ensemble cast together was Gladys's wedding. That was kind of a disappointment for me as Taissa, because my whole mood and energy for the day was very somber. I mean, I don't know why she wasn't happy on her wedding day, but Gladys was behind the veil, was just like tears pouring down her face. So everybody was like, okay, Taissa's preparing. Let's not bother her when I'm here like crying in the corner. And they say rolling. And for me to get into it, I'm in the corner and I'm just wailing.
Sounds exhausting.
And also I had this like 10-foot train of a wedding gown, like attached to the wedding gown. I couldn't walk anywhere. At one point they put it in like a Zara tote bag for me so I could, walk around and go get my own coffee because I like to be, self-sufficient.
Well, tell us about the wedding dress. How did you work with Kasia on that particular look?
Honestly, I am a mannequin. Some of the actors have opinions, but I mean, when you have someone who is such a master of their craft, like I go in and I say, just put it on me. Kasia designed a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful dress. I think it's like the most intense thing I've ever worn in 30 years of life. We timed it. It took 23 minutes and 40 seconds to get the whole outfit on. So many tiny little buttons and snaps and like the lace. It was insane. Because the wedding scene is what? It's like maybe 15 minutes of screen time, but it takes 7 days of filming. Getting married 7 times, I don't recommend it.
It's pretty intense.
While crying.
How many times did you literally walk down the aisle?
Great question. I would say at least 25, 30 times.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And the weight of the train was insane. We had all the bridesmaids come and hold it because I'm like, I can't walk.
Yeah.
The way it like tugs on the lower back, like my core, I feel it was like my workout for the week. I had a 6-pack afterwards. I should thank Kasia, actually.
Yeah, you see the bridesmaids carrying it right behind you. There's a great overhead shot as you're walking down.
We had so many rehearsals to set this up because obviously on the day when you're filming, like money burns quick, lights going down, we have to film. So in prep, we did a bunch of rehearsals for this just to navigate like how to walk down the aisle. It sounds simple, right? But it's not.
You mentioned it's also such a heartbreaking scene, because we don't really want you to get married. The audience doesn't want Gladys to get married. And we see that Gladys is crying as you're walking down the aisle. Obviously, that's shot from your perspective through the veil. What was that shoot like?
Honestly, like even you talking about it right now, the flashbacks I'm having in my mind, I can feel the emotions rising very easily. Because the POV shot, like, you filmed that obviously, but I experienced that. And the rest of the cast, like the members that I love these people. We've been knowing each other for 5 years. We've been filming the show for 5 years. And to see them in the audience when it's supposed to be a joyous moment. So everybody's faces start with like elation, everybody's happy for Gladys. Like, oh, it's the big wedding day. So you see everyone's smiles. And then once they see as I'm passing, the smiles all fade and you see their eyes recognize that like, oh, she really doesn't want this. And I remember seeing Larry's face, Harry, who plays Larry, my brother. And it was so heartbreaking for me just to see him be so sad based, like, it's like a human domino of emotions.
Yeah, tell us about working with Ben Lamb, who plays Hector the Duke. What has it been like to...
I hate that guy.
Yeah, to create this relationship with him.
Ben's an amazing guy, like genuinely. He's super intellectual and also really silly and funny. And our just like chemistry as friends is very nice. It's been super easy to fall into it. It's nice to have a love interest with someone who you actually like would go grab a coffee with. You know what I mean?
Well, in this episode, leading up to the marriage, I mean, we see Gladys look pretty miserable, look pretty sad, alone. Marion comes over and tries to talk her into it, tries to get her to eat something. Is Miss Gladys going to come down the stairs or not? There's a whole buildup.
I like the suspense.
Right. It's very suspenseful. Is there a tiny part of Gladys by the time that she's walking down the aisle that might just be a little bit excited about becoming a duchess? It's a big deal.
I think it's 0%, to be totally honest with you.
Okay.
At least what I was feeling in that moment was 0%. I really don't think she gives a shit about the duchess title. It's really, for me, that's Bertha's plan. Gladys, I think all she's thinking in the moment is how like she wishes she would have run off and eloped with Billy Carlton sooner. Duchess is, I think, the farthest thing on her mind. But what's beautiful is later in the season, Gladys learns... She starts to understand her mother's perspective about how to attain freedom. And she dips her toes into that little pool of power, and it's really fun to experience that through Gladys.
I mean, we've really seen Gladys grow up over this season. What has it been like for you to portray a character as she grows up? We've seen you grow up too.
Yes. Honestly, no, it's beautiful. I think that was the thing I was most excited about for even when season 2 came around, because I've done multiple seasons of a TV show, American Horror Story, but there wasn't the connection of playing the same character like immediately after, like 1 year later and you're playing the next season. It's different characters, different stories. This is the first time when I came back for Gladys season 2 that I got to relive a character and pick up from where she last was and then grow. And at that point, you kind of know the character better than, not better than Michael Angler, but you know it almost better than the directors and writers. And you kind of get to just live and experience, and you know what the emotional arc is better than what the advice they want to give you. Obviously, you always have to, pay respect, and you want to create the scene together, but it's incredible to just grow with someone, You always want to put a piece of yourself in the painting.
For you personally, what would you love to see for Gladys? Would you love to see her having more of a voice?
Bertha is such an influence in Gladys's life, no matter how much Gladys wants to push back against that power. The thing that Gladys craves the most is freedom, especially from her mother's grasp. Gladys realizes for her to have that freedom that she craves, it's actually bringing her closer to her mother than she ever could have imagined. I think it's just like, I'm excited for Gladys to have that bit of the Bertha ambition, or just like, she's got that Bertha sass and she's happy to do what she wants. And I think Gladys has she's gotten a taste of that at the middle end of season 3. I like to see where that goes when she's, happy on her throne as a duchess.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see that. You were talking about growing as an actress and being with the same, growing into your role, growing into that set, into the whole space. I remember from season 1, you talking about learning all of the manners and the rules around dining, and just how much fun those dining scenes were to shoot.
Yeah.
Challenging in their own way. Have you grown used to all of that as well?
I still love a dining scene. Like, I love to eat. I constantly am eating all day. So when I get to get paid to eat, I think Carrie Coon agrees it's one of the better days of filming. The etiquette now is sort of ingrained in me. When you have the corset on, you're sitting in the chair, and the butler pushes it, or the footman pushes the chair, and you kind of are just like, okay, this. Sometimes, like with the soup, like you're supposed to spoon away and like dab, and then sometimes I mess that up, but it's pretty ingrained at this point.
In this episode, we also, or in the previous episode, I mean, I have to ask you about this moment when there's the big painting reveal and you're standing underneath the portrait and you're fidgeting with the dreaded pearl necklace. Tell us about that scene. And I'm just curious, was it already broken? Did you really have to yank it?
Every tiny little detail is so meticulously like sorted out in advance. We had rehearsals of this necklace breakage, and also you can't bend your arms so like to get my hand up to the necklace. I think we were in the fitting, and I was telling Kasia, I was like, "Hold on, how do I get to my hand?" With the gloves and the thing, but then we did the sleeveless dress at that point.
It looked very natural. You looked very uncomfortable.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was.
You were struggling.
But that at the moment is just Gladys she doesn't have any control. She feels it all just like slipping out of her. As I said at the beginning, the first episode, she feels like there's like a semblance of she has control and power over her own life. Like her dad's on her side. She's going to be able to make the decision she wants. And all of a sudden, Bertha takes it, takes that right away from her, and she doesn't know there's nothing to grasp onto.
We thank you for your time and for being back on the podcast.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Taissa is just lovely. We've spoken to her before, but it was so fun to get to delve into her big episode, Gladys's wedding. And something I hadn't considered, Tom, is just how long it takes to shoot just a scene like the wedding. I mean, she was saying it took a week and the dress got very heavy to wear. I love all the anecdotes she had about that.
That she was literally carrying it around in a Zara bag. It paints such a picture. I love that juxtaposition of 2025 and 84. So much fun talking to Taissa, and we are not done because now we get to go even deeper into that scene and into all of those amazing dresses. We are going to speak with costume designer Kasia Walicka Maimone.
So, Kasia, it's lovely to talk to you again. And I always love seeing, but both me and Tom love seeing the incredible work that you and your team do on this show. And I imagine now by season 3, you must have such a shorthand with the people you work with and also a portfolio of references that just lives in your head.
It's definitely this privilege of working in episodic TV that we have the chance of learning from previous seasons and building upon the knowledge of what we know. It is a feast working on this job. It's a privilege.
Yeah, you definitely feel that. And it is an extravaganza, as you say. But I imagine you also have to strike the balance between looking amazing on screen and also being historically accurate. Is that correct?
Absolutely. But there's always a little bit of a challenge with the historical accuracy because it's inspired by real people and real events, but nevertheless transformed for the needs for our storytelling and our characters. It all starts from historical research. It all starts from a very strict historical framework that keeps expanding and being manipulated slightly towards the storyline and towards the needs of each of the characters' trajectory as we are doing it in our story.
Well, and the big point of the story leading up to today's episode 4, of course, has been, Gladys's wedding to the Duke. There are great parallels to something that really happened in history with Consuelo's marriage to the Duke. And we're talking about that a lot on the podcast. Can you talk a little bit about any historical research that happened on your side? Did you look into Consuelo's designs? Did that influence any kind of design choices?
Absolutely. We studied it to death. But Consuelo's wedding happened in 1895, which is about 12 years later than our storyline, which is a completely different silhouette in fashion. That was a major transformation of what was happening in the reality, in the historical reality of costumes. We looked at so many weddings from that period and were inspired by so many other weddings that would reflect the status of the wedding that we are creating for Gladys and the Duke. We felt that it was necessary to reflect the spirit of this wedding rather than the exact details because we were in a completely different historical dateline. So you really try to find the language of what is going to create that visual feast for us.
And it comes through. It really comes through. I never had thought about that before then. I mean, we've talked about the fact that Consuelo was married in 95, and this is more than a decade before that in the other storylines. But I never thought about the fact that time difference certainly has an effect on the fashion and the look.
Yes, very much so. By the 90s, it was a very different vocabulary in the costumes, which, I'm pushing it continuously towards the 90s in our story, because we do know that Bertha and Gladys are very much influenced by French fashion. So you will see in this season that I step a little bit outside of the silhouette, the small shoulders, super fitted bodice, still very much corseted with a bustle silhouette, but I do look for the influences of French fashions for garments for Bertha and Gladys particularly. But there is really fun tension between a few worlds that is happening in this current season that is for sure fun to play with costumes and creating this tension as the newness and classical traditional values meet on the screen.
It's amazing when you see Taissa walk down the stairs and you see everyone holding the train and the veil. There's so much that goes into that one dress, let alone the bridesmaids. But focusing on Gladys's wedding dress, can you approximate how many people it took to make the dress or how long it took to make that dress?
I think it took about 3 months to develop that concept of the dress. There was definitely a lot of study of where to find that language and how to acknowledge Consuelo's wedding and figure out how we're going to make this dramatic, beautiful dress. We kept adding flowers to the veil until the last minute. There was hundreds and hundreds of flowers. There was an army of people adding the flowers. Also, was a collaboration with our milliners who were creating the veil and combining the two elements of the train and the veil, and combining the geometry of the two elements with this giant long train, that we had to actually figure out how on earth is going to be carried in this aisle, because we realized at some point that we had to make sure that the width of the train matches the dimension of the church. And we collaborate with Bob Shaw, our production designer, to make sure that they will fit between all those flower ornaments while
Amazing.
Gladys walks down the aisle, while our bridesmaids with their extravagance of dresses fit within the meandering corridor of the flowers in the aisle and come to the altar.
So beautiful. And the wedding itself is a big scene. Not only do you have the bride or the bridesmaids, but you also have all of the main cast and the background extras, and they're all in their afternoon wedding finery themselves. So what goes into dressing all of those extras for you and your team?
I mean, there's so many different stages, because early on, at the beginning of the design process, we know that it's necessary to create a total look. We knew that it's afternoon wedding. We knew that Gladys is going to be in white and the bridesmaids, and at the same time, it needed to feel like this extraordinary festive event when people dress for it. So I did use a bunch of stocks from previous season from the Easter party. So it was very balanced, and the way we placed all the new dresses versus the repeated dresses from previous season. There's a lot of mapping out and strategies, and of course it's supported by extraordinary team of people. There was probably, by the end of the wedding, there was, I think, about 200 of our team that was
Wow.
working on execution. That's separate from the makers.
Yeah.
That is the people who are fitting, altering, and starting dressing people probably 2:00 in the morning on the day off, because it
Wow.
takes that long between hair and makeup and placing the hats and corsets and bustles. And it's a feast. But the moment when you see it walking, like when we all walked into the church and saw it, there's so much satisfaction from that moment of experiencing it, that when it comes to life, that like you feel that your creative process is being reflected.
It's really fun to see a lot of the main cast together in the one room. And it made me consider how each of the characters has their own personal look. I'm curious, now that you're into a third season and the actors are very familiar with their characters, do they want to get involved more in the look of their characters?
Always inspired, endlessly inspired by our actors. They come with such a great, grand personas that inform us so much. They inform the designs. They develop the characters. That we have what's on the page, but then at the same time, the actors bring their whole world to the exploration of who those people are. And it keeps growing.
Well, and of course, this season we get to meet some new characters too. There are a few we could talk about here, and each one of them seems to have their own look as well. By episode 4 here, we have met, of course, Mrs. Kirkland. And, looking back at her dresses and her hats and the way that she is dressed, you realize that she stands out, right, in the scenes. She has a very specific look. Can you talk about that look that you've given her?
It's a continuous collaboration with our researcher, Susanna Gilbert, who keeps building the visual library over and over and over again, because we have about more than 40,000 images from the period of paintings and photographs and sketches and magazines that we continuously keep diving into it. But a lot of the times the photography from the period keeps feeding those elements of character and kind of veer towards the elements from the real people of what they represent. And, humanity keeps delivering.
And, when I was looking at Mrs. Kirkland, I just now I don't have the terminology straight here, but it seemed more conservative, a little fussier patterns, a fussier, tighter look. It was old-fashioned. That's the word I'm looking for.
I think you nailed it. That's exactly, I'm thrilled to hear, because that's exactly what I was going for. So I'm like, no, yes, perfect.
Well, what was it like to create the look for Monica, Bertha's sister? Because we hear that she is not fashionable. So you kind of have to create something that isn't in fashion.
It was fun because it was so clearly on page. That character was described so well. Like, she reveals a part of Bertha's history that we have not seen. And I think that with Monica, she's a little bit stunned being in the world of Bertha, but I also wanted to create this clash between those two worlds and represents this like diving into the roots of Bertha, where she comes from, and for us to realize that this is a quite a journey that happened for Bertha. And it was written on the page that Monica is borrowing dresses from Bertha and wearing them like that. We reused a dress that was worn by Bertha at Newport for the wedding for Monica.
When you were just talking about Bertha, it just made me also think about in this episode, she tells her sister, oh, well, let's see, there's a morning dress and then a this dress and then a that dress. She goes through 3 or 4 different dresses a day. That just makes me wonder how many dresses have been made for Bertha and where are they? Do you ever reuse a dress that we see in an episode? Is this common to reuse them, or are they not? Are we not seeing them as well more than once?
Well, we do reuse them a little bit. Bertha is a person who would continuously make new stuff. That's part of this language of impressing the neighbors, impressing the society. And I think it's such an expense that, and also she has an unlimited amount of money. That's just part of the vocabulary of Bertha, that she has the means to do it. But with Bertha, yes, we make insane amount of dresses for her. They are all in our studio. And unlike the household of Agnes, where we discussed it with Julian Fellows, that those ladies would be repeating the dresses, part of the vocabulary, repeating the dresses. We map it out for each character. We map out what are we seeing, how long we seeing. We have like charts of screen time. And so we do know that how long or short sometimes the dresses lived on the camera. So we know which ones are safer for us to use because they are not as strongly embedded in the memories of previous users. So it's a very strategized process.
And I know this is impossible to answer, but I might as well just try. Sticking to Bertha and her dozens of dresses, do you have a favorite?
No.
Safe.
Well, Kasia, congratulations to you and your team for another wonderful season. And thanks so much for talking to us once again on this podcast.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Wow, Alicia, it is just always so interesting to talk to Kasia. It's she's so insightful, and she always brings up things that I, had never thought about, like the fact that yes, the show is reflecting something that took place 10 years after the timeline of the show, and she has to kind of wrestle with that in terms of costuming, come up with a solution, which of course she has.
Yeah, there is so much of a balance to be found between making it historically accurate, but also making it look beautiful on screen. And I also love hearing about how they reuse costumes. I'm just hoping that after the show is done, and we hope that's not for a long time, that the costumes go on display somewhere. It sounds like Gladys's wedding dress should be in a museum.
I'm pulling for the Met.
Yes.
Just saying. Just putting it out there.
That would be full circle. Okay, Tom, that's it for us. That's another episode of the official Gilded Age podcast done. But make sure you watch new episodes of the Gilded Age on Sundays, and then watch or listen to this companion podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye. This has been the official Gilded Age podcast, written, hosted, and produced by Alicia Malone and me, Tom Meyers.
The podcast is a production of HBO in collaboration with Pod People.
For Pod People, our supervising producer is Rebecca Chasson, associate producer Sam Gabauer, and our video editor is Susana Vasquez. Special thanks to Hannah Pedersen and Amy Machado.
For HBO Podcasts, our executive producer is Michael Gluckstadt, and associate producer is Aaron Kelly.